RalliTek. No roads required.
Hey guys, Scott from RalliTek here. Today I've got a 2021 Crosstrek 2.5 Sport in the shop. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of suspension work to it. We're going to start by removing a 1.5 inch lift. He wanted to go bigger, so we've got our 2 inch lift going on. We've got 1 inch raised springs, 1 inch prototype overload springs, RalliTek control arms, RalliTek trailing arms, and Bilstein B6s. So we're going to start working on that and we'll show you guys how we do it. So the first step that I do on cars here at the shop is I'll actually remove the top hat nuts for the rear. So to do that, you got to pull these styrofoam pieces up, just gently pry. There's plastic clips that actually hold them in. So gently pry on that, be sure you don't tear the styrofoam. And there's these panels that sit right here. You just pop that out and you expose your 2 nuts on the passenger side and same on the driver's side. Just get your 14mm socket out. We're going to start taking the front strut out. This is the tools I like to grab. I've got my electric ratchet. You don't need an electric ratchet, but I like mine. You'll need a 19mm. I got a nice flex head gear wrench for popping the strut bolts loose. Then I got a 19 socket, 10, 12, and then a 14. The 10 will be used for the ABS sensor. I like to pull it all the way out of the hub just in case anything were to ever happen. It's free, it's loose, you don't have to worry about it. You got your 12mm. This will be for taking your brake hose off the strut. And on most cars, you'll also see me grab a 17. That 17 is going to be for the sway bar. This car's already had the front sway bars removed, so I don't have to worry about that. The 14, this will be used to take the top hats out of the car. I use a shallow one just to make sure I don't mess up the plastic with a deep socket or anything. I have enough room with that. And you'll see I've got a flathead screwdriver, a small punch, and my dead blow. The flathead screwdriver helps me take this clip off. I just basically squeeze it and then just pry the little tabs down so I can pull that out. Then the punch and the dead blow just help me get these bolts out. So I'll start by taking the ABS sensor out of the hub. Sometimes they're a little tricky, but if you actually take your screwdriver and tap right here, just with your hand, you'll just break it loose, and then it should just pull right out. If you have ABS sensor, it's free. And then I'll just use my fingers to squeeze the big tabs and the screwdriver for the small ones. That comes free. It's out of the equation, don't need to worry about it. Switch over to my 12mm. Brake hose is free. I'm going to start working on the strut bolts. Take my 19. Let's break them loose. One thing you'll notice, the top one has this washer. This is very important. This goes on the top. What this allows you to do is, for the alignment, it allows you to turn the top camber bolt while the nut is still a little bit loose. So you got to make sure that goes back on the top. And I'll typically just lift up on the rotor a little bit. See if it'll let me get, there's the top bolt. This is a camber bolt. You can see the eccentric on it right there. That goes in the top. For the bottom bolt, sometimes I get lucky, sometimes not. I'll take my punch. Pull it out, just leave it just like that. So now the strut's totally free from the knuckle. It's just tight up top. So I'll take my ratchet, my 14, and what I'll do is actually step up here, start loosening my bolts. I like to start at the back ones, get those all the way off. Set them in a place where it's easy to get to. So I'll usually pull the back two nuts off of it because the front is a lot easier to get to. So then with my right hand, I actually grab the spring. I'll hold the strut. Use my left hand to get the top nut off. Set that down out of there. And pull your strut out. Do the same thing for the other side. You'll have both front struts out of your car. All right, so you pulled your front struts out, you've thrown them around, you've mixed them up, you don't know what side is what anymore. I'm gonna tell you how to determine what side is what side on your strut. So the thing that matters is the location of this brake hose mounting bolt. It's got the nut on it. So you want that to go to the back of the car. So this one is pointed, this is pointed out. That's going to the back of the car in this case, so this is the driver's side. So you want to grab the top hat spacer. It looks like this. The passenger side is going to have a yellow dot right there. This one does not have a yellow dot. This is the driver's side. That's the driver's side. And we'll just tighten it down. So here we got it. It's built. We've got a Bilstein strut, new RalliTek spring, 2-inch top hat spacer here. It's all on the correct side. So next step is to go take it on the car. Now we're at the car. The installation of the strut is the exact opposite as when you removed it. What I like to do, since I've got a lift here, I'll just kind of get the strut up in there and let it rest on the knuckle like that. I'll step up on my lift and then I'll get the top nuts on it. All right, so I've got the strut sitting on the knuckle. I'll use my left hand and grab the spring and basically lift up, and then use my right hand to help align the top hat into the hole. We'll start the nuts to make sure you don't drop the strut down in there. And then once you're started, tighten these guys down. So that works for now. I'll get them torqued when we get the car set down. One thing you want to notice on here is I've got an arrow on the top hat spacer right there. You want to make sure that that points to the front of the vehicle, and then the RT logo goes to the fender. So continuation, you just do exactly the opposite. So I'll start with the knuckle bolts. I like to put the bottom one in first. It's typically a little easier to line up. Maybe. There we go. It's the straight bolt. The head of the bolt goes from the back of the car to the front of the car. Sometimes you need a little bit of help to get it all the way in. Just like that. Now you take your eccentric bolt. What I like to do is just push on the top of the rotor, just rock everything in. Goes in just like that. Your nuts, again, the bottom one will get just a nut. We don't need to tighten these right now. Top one gets the washer on it first, and then the nut. And just leave it loose while we assemble everything else. What I like to do now is I'll put the ABS sensor back in the hub. I like to get just all the bolts started, and once they're all started, I'll go by and tighten everything down. Put that back in there. Now on the brake hose, same thing. The bolt goes from the bottom. Want to make sure on this one that you get it started nice before you get any tools on it. There we go. And you just grab your 10 millimeter, your 12 millimeter, tighten those down, and then I'll show you how to tighten down the knuckle bolts. So when we tighten the knuckle bolts, I like to give a little bit of negative camber just to start with, so that way the adjustments aren't as drastic on the alignment. So right now I have it in full positive. So what I'll do is I'll just turn this and then watch the knuckle go into the clevis of the strut. And get it kind of somewhere like that, and then I'll tighten it down. These I'm not going to torque right away because we're on an alignment rack, so I'll be doing that right away. At home, if you're taking it to an alignment shop, you want to tighten these bolts, torque them down to 116 foot-pounds per side, and just like that, your strut's back in your car, ready to go. All right, the front end's back on the ground. It's not settled, so it looks pretty tall here, but it's done. Let's move on to the rear. So now we're on to the rear of the car. The tools you're going to want for the rear is you're going to want a 17 end wrench. I like my 17 ratcheting wrench to break stuff loose. Then I've got a 17 socket on my electric ratchet again. I also have, again, I've got a punch and my dead blow. So we're going to start by taking these bolts off. So that one goes up into the subframe. That's for your strut. We've already removed the top hat nuts, so with these two out, I can drop the strut and everything down. Since we're doing the control arm as well, this is a step I don't typically do. We will remove that bolt as well, so we'll pull the whole control arm out. The one thing that we've found here is on these cars, the sway bar mounts to the chassis of the car instead of the subframe, like on your Foresters, your early Foresters, and your Outbacks. So it attaches to this point on the knuckle there. This car's already had the sway bars removed, so we don't have to worry about that. To pull that, you just need a 14 millimeter, pop it off. You can do one end link or both end links. That way, it just allows everything to go back together nice and smooth. Go the right way. Grab my little punch. Be sure to not damage the threads, but let's give that bolt a few taps. You can pull it out. Just pull down like that. You'll notice the strut's coming down with you. Pop the strut bolt out. The strut comes out. There's that. And since we're doing the control arms as well, pull that out, ready to go to the other side. All right, so we also need to pull down this plastic and this plastic. You've got, on this side, you've got a bolt here, a plastic clip. There's a bolt on this side and a plastic clip on the back. So the bolts are 12 millimeter. So you just get your 12 millimeter socket out. The clips, you'll see me use a fancy clip tool, but a thin flathead screwdriver will work just the same. So let's go ahead and start taking it down. So we'll start taking the plastic clips out. There's one more clip on this side right here. and the one at the back. And down it comes. Alright, so we've got the subframe drop installed. Now we're going to move on to the lower control arms. So here's a factory control arm. It's stamped steel. This is what comes on your basic Crosstrek. It's used on the Outbacks and the Foresters and even the WRX STI as well. Well, people bend these. You'll hit them. I've even seen them break. It doesn't work for us. So we've got our RalliTek adjustable one. It's made out of 3/16 steel. It's got a high strength, high quality Johnny joint on the end, so you don't have the Heim joint, you don't have any knocking around. You've got a Zerk fitting on it so you can grease it if it does start to make a little bit of noise, and you've got an adjuster on here. So you can fix your camber problems with this. It's gonna be stronger, it's gonna last longer. You're gonna really enjoy this product. So because this is thicker, this is the factory bolt that held it to the knuckle right there. You see there's not nearly enough threads to actually be strong. So what we do is we will take what originally mounted the shock to the control arm, which is this bolt right here. It's a lot longer. You put it through there, you've got plenty of threads right there, so it's gonna be nice and strong. The nut's not gonna back off on you. Super simple, you put it up there. The bolt goes from the front of the car to the back of the car. Just put it in like that. It'll use the factory nut. You can just start it just to make sure that it's not going to fall off the car on you. So the next step is you take your strut, just like this. You put it up in place. Sometimes it's helpful to have a buddy at the top to put the nuts on, just to hold it, help hold it. Here, I just kind of use my head, literally. Get that bolt through. Put it up in place like that. This is the factory bolt that held the control arm into the subframe. Just like that. All you got to do is put your nuts on, tighten everything down. You want to leave it a little bit loose before you set it on the ground, so that way you can torque everything down once the suspension is settled. And when the suspension is settled, you'll torque all three of these bolts to 89 foot-pounds. So this bolt here, this is supplied in the kit. Since we use the original one for there in that spot, we give you a longer bolt there, so that way you can tighten it down. This uses a 15 on the bolt head and an 18 on the nut side. All right, so the rear suspension is pretty much buttoned up. We have our control arms on, the struts back in place. This is our prototype 1-inch overload spring. We've got our 2-inch spacer up on top, and we got our subframe spacers installed. Something that you're probably gonna notice is the fact that there are 2 blue spacers stacked on each other. The reason for that is the kit that we pulled off gets rid of the factory subframe spacer, and that is needed in our kit. Our spacers are pretty close to the same height, so I just pulled another set of 4 off the shelf and we're good to go. All right, so next up what we're gonna do is we're gonna swap out the trailing arms. So we have a set of trailing arms that just showed up for this car. They're a lot stronger. These like to bend. They probably would break as well. What you need to do to take these off is you need a 17 for there, and then up in here there's this little bracket for this e-brake cable that uses a 12mm. We're gonna pull these off real fast, and then I'll show you how to get it out of there. the bolts are a little tricky to get out like these ones are. You can grab your dead blow. Sometimes you need a little persuasion from a punch as well. Typically, you only need to get one out. Because once you pull this side off, this bolt's loose and it'll come right out, just like that. So I've got the RalliTek trailing arm here on the bench, and I have it set up to the factory length. The easiest way that I know to do that is to take your factory trailing arm and put your bolts in it, set it like that, and then you just put the trailing arm over like that, and you just kind of make sure that everything's pretty much centered up. So this is ready to go. This is a really good starting point for this platform. You typically don't need to adjust the trailing arm on this one much, but right now you've got a good start. So you're ready to install it now. I like to start with the knuckle end, so I'll just put it up in there, put the factory bolt in the hole, just like that. If your car is like ours, when we took the trailing arm off, the whole knuckle slid forward. It's pretty easy to manipulate back into place, but it does take a little bit of work. So you might want to have your trusty mallet to help. So I'm not quite lined up right now. The knuckle still needs to go back a little bit more. The spring is kind of keeping everything forward. Let's take my punch from earlier. And what I like to do is you can get it in the hole and then start getting things aligned. Once you get it started, you can tap it through with your mallet. Still a little bit off. So you just kind of have to work at it just a little bit to get it lined up so the bolts will go through the hole. Sometimes to help line up bolts, I like to get my trusty ratchet strap. You guys have seen me use this in other videos. I used it today. So what I did was I hooked on where the sway bar mounts to on the knuckle, and then I went up to one of the holes in the subframe, and I just gave it just a little bit, and the bolt goes right in the hole. So I really enjoy using ratchet straps and stuff like that. So it allows me to get bolts lined up that wouldn't normally be able to get lined up. So we are done. So on the rear, we've got the subframe installed, which I showed you. Control arms are in, trailing arms are in, struts are in, top hat spacers are in. So the next step before we do the alignment is to torque all the bolts. So these 3 bolts are going to torque to 89 foot-pounds. On the trailing arm, top and bottom, those get torqued to 67 foot-pounds. We'll get those done real fast, and then we'll get the alignment going. Going through right now and just tightening everything. So I left it all loose so we could settle the suspension. So those are all my 17s. I'm going to flip over to the strut bolt, which is the 18 and the 15. Okay, so I grab my torque wrench, set it to 89 foot-pounds. There's all my 89 foot-pounds. So we'll go down to 67. Get the trailing arms torqued down. So alignment's all done. I'm happy with it. We're gonna go drive around the block and verify that the steering wheel's straight and everything works there. One of the last things we do before we go on a test drive with these adjustable arms is you need to make sure your jam nuts are tight. So like on this arm right here, you've got your jam nut, this is your adjuster, and you've got another jam nut. So what you want to do is make sure that this jam nut is tight to the control arm itself. And you want to get these tight. This jam nut needs to be tight to the adjuster. Sometimes this one is a little bit of a pain to get to. What you can do is raise the car up, basically let the suspension drop to full droop, and then this jam nut's a lot easier to get to. So just remember, you want the jam nut tight to what you don't want to move. So the control arm has threads in it, so that has to be tight to the control arm. The adjuster has threads on it, so you need to get that jam nut tight to the adjuster.